We've been
Lee,
we've
sorry,
been a
can I get you to say hello one more time because forgot to hit record. So Backwoods
haha.
virtual tasting,
Nothing but tech issues.
special virtual guest star from Northern Victoria, Leigh Attwoods from Backwoods. Lee, welcome, mate.
Hey guys, how you going? Thanks Ollie, thanks Emma, thanks to the Whiskey List for having me on. Yeah, we're a big fan of what you guys do and the support you offer our industry and distilleries like us. So thanks for helping us to get our product out there.
Awesome.
Emma, over to you. Do you want to kick us off?
Yeah, well, I mean, welcome everyone to another tasting. As you can hear, if anyone was in the last tasting, I promise I'll try not to be as terrible with the sound quality. Just a quick little side note, if anyone wants to embarrass Oliver, it is his birthday today, so wish him a happy birthday in the chat. So to, mark this very special occasion, obviously we're going through Backwoods Whiskies, which Lee is legitimately the expert about, and I've had the very great pleasure to visit them recently. And I won't talk too much because Lee definitely knows a lot more about the whiskies incoming than I do. So yeah, Lee, did you want to tell us a little bit about the distillery and you and Bree and all the fun things?
Yeah, sure. So we started distilling in 2017, and I guess our sort of goal was to make whiskey. And that sort of interest in whiskey just came from a love of the drink, and I think probably the same reason everyone is on the Zoom tonight. Just a real love of whiskey, and people often say, yeah, what inspired you to do it? And we often blame our kids that they led us to drink, and that but it's not really the case. That the kids kind of, when they came along, we stopped going out on Saturday nights and we started spending our money on nice bottles of whiskey. And that sort of evolved from, I wonder how you make it, to I reckon I could make it. And then, yeah, sort of a trip down to Tassie, and I did a course out of the UK, and yeah, it sort of, it came to the realization. It sort of coincided as well with our move to the country. We were planning on moving back to the country anyway. This is sort of where we grew up. We were in Melbourne for 20 years, and so yeah, it just sort of all came together perfectly. We got up here and we had a nice shed on our property. So we spoke to council and we said, could we, start our distillery in the shed? And they were like, well, we really don't like that idea, but we can't actually stop you. So they sort of gave us a little loophole. We were allowed to get the business started there. And so we spent the first sort of almost 4 years in there. A little bit less, making whiskey on the weekends and keeping our day jobs, and really waiting for it to mature. And then we moved the distillery into the current site now, which is in the township of Yakandanda. It's actually on the old train site. So it's a really beautiful space. It's stills in there now, and a big mash system, and it's just a really nice place to work, and I hope a nice place for people to visit too. You get to kind of come in and taste the whiskies, hear the story, and you get to really sit around the stills, and it's all happening around you. The stills usually run most days. At the moment, they're running on weekends and sort of around the clock. So yeah, you usually get to see a bit of action if you come in and see us at Backwoods. So Bree kind of handles all of the marketing and sales side of things, and I do all the production. We've got a full-time distiller now, another brewer and distiller, which is awesome. And we've got some casual staff that work for us in the tasting room. So yeah, we're growing, and lots of exciting things ahead. Should we get into a whiskey?
Yeah, I was just about to say, should we crack into the single malt batch 1 Tawny cask? So
yeah,
obviously I think probably you guys are best known for your rye whiskey. So this being a single malt, tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, so this was actually our first release, of course, our batch 1. We chose a Tawny cask, and I suppose the reason we chose that is because one of our goals at Backwoods is to try and really create, whiskey. I guess if we could use that word, terroir, or just a whiskey of place. We really wanted to make something that represents the northeast of Victoria. And we managed to get hold of some casks from Rutherglen. And so they were really beautiful old sort of 50-year-old Tawny casks that we had recoopered. So we really wanted that to be our first release, because I think, you know, we're so close to one of Australia's best fortified regions that, yeah, we wanted our first whiskey to kind of, I guess, build on that success. This was a vatting of, I think, 4 casks now. It was a little while ago. 4 casks that we had recoopered, toasted and recharred. Probably a little bit interesting stuff, I suppose, about the mash bill. We use 3 different types of barley in our mash bill, and I guess the star of the show is kind of the crystal malt that we use. Crystal malt. If you're not sure, it's a pretty common grain that's used in, or common malt that's used in pale ales and in brewing. And it imparts, when you mash with it, it imparts a really kind of lovely caramel and sort of honeycomb notes into the whiskey. So mix that in with a bit of Tawny and you just get this kind of beautiful sweetness. We also use a Belgian ale yeast, which actually gives our single malt a little bit of a spice. You should be able to find in there a little bit of a spice. It's almost like a white pepper. So we use part brewer's yeast and part distiller's yeast as well. We usually give the Belgian ale yeast a good head start on the distiller's yeast, because the distiller's yeast is a bit of a bully. It comes in and tries to take over. So we usually give them a good kind of at least 8 hours separation, and sometimes more, depending on the temperature, at the ambient temperature, because the warmer it is, the happier the yeast is, and it really gets going. The distiller's yeast, that is. So we try and give the brewer's yeast a nice head start.
Sorry, do you guys get much temperature variation up in Yakandanda?
We do. So particularly in the bond store, you know, we've in the last couple of weeks we've been having -4s and -5s in the morning, which is pretty damn cold. And then, you know, the other extreme in summer, we can get 45 degrees here. So yeah, it's really interesting watching what the casks do. Obviously in the summer, you see the ABV really start inside the cask, it'll start to climb, but then over the winter, it really kind of evens back out. By the time the whiskies are mature, the ABV it climbs slightly, you know, no more than sort of 1% or 1.5%. You know, there's much more dramatic swings that you see in Australian distilleries, but I think just sort of being up, you know, where we are, we're sort of a little bit elevated. We're about 450 meters above sea level. I suppose in the last few years too, we've had so much rain, so that humidity really makes a difference. But yeah, we sure do get those pretty dramatic temperature swings that can, you know, that actually do make for fast maturation. You can get pretty good whiskies out in a pretty short amount of time.
Fair enough. Do you guys have, obviously, you know, a lot of them aren't really age statemented, you know, you guys kind of go for the traditional 3+ years, or?
Yeah, so pretty much everything now we're putting out is at least 3 years. But we're over the last couple of years, since we've really ramped up production, we're not filling any more smaller casks. We're refilling some of the smaller casks that we've already used, but we're trying not to add any more small casks to the fleet. So yeah, we're pretty much filling hogsheads 300 liters, and barrels 200s and barriques 225s, which is good in a way, because it ends up being a lot cheaper because you're not spending so much. You know, you're not buying 3 barrels instead of 1. But but the whiskey will take a little bit longer. But again, we're in such a great place for fast maturation. Even in the hogsheads, you see them start to make progress really already within 2 years, and you know, by 3 or 4 years, they're going to be really good whiskies. So we're trying to get more age on our whiskies. I think, like everyone, and probably will head towards putting an age on our whiskies. That'd be great. This year we'll have a 4-year-old that we release. That's exciting. That's a 4-year-old bourbon cask. So yeah, to sort of make those little milestones is really exciting as a distillery, to be able to put out a 4-year-old. You know, it's that battle of sort of, you know, you want to hang on to whiskey as long as you can. There's demand for it. You taste it, it's good. it's really hard, at times to hang on to it. But you've got to, so it's just that kind of difficult part of sort of managing your casks.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously, if anyone wants to unmute yourselves to ask Leigh a question as well, we've set it so that you can do a little bit of an unmuting. Obviously, I've got questions, but I'm sure you guys all have questions as well.
I've got a question.
Yeah.
Leigh, this is your very first whiskey that you guys have released that we're trying.
Yeah.
Where was the decision for 48%? I know so many different distillers have distillers strength and their preferred strength. Some do 45, some do 50. Where and how come 48 sort of hit your mark?
Yeah, so every time we do a release, I'll do a set of samples from really 44 all the way up to sort of 50 and sometimes 50 plus. So yeah, and just over a few days, they'll just all be on the table, and you just sip, take notes, sip, take notes, sip, take notes, and it's just really about finding that sweet spot. So yeah, we sort of get a couple of other people involved and just try and find where everyone thinks that sweet spot is. So yeah, on that occasion, it was 48, and we've sort of found like with our rise, most of the time we found that 46 is our sweet spot. I think in the red gums it's been 48, but yeah, we're not sort of committed to a particular ABV. We'll match the ABV to whatever we think tastes best. We'll just do it that way.
Yeah, awesome.
I'm very keen to try batch 1 and batch 2 in a second to see how much your spirit has changed over time. But we just sampled batch 1 now, and you obviously familiar with what you're putting out or about to put out. Do you think your spirit has evolved over the last couple of years?
Yeah, definitely. And I think when you're a startup distillery, and you're trying to get a little bit of capital back, and it is easier to get out whiskies with more cask influence, so like a Tawny cask, or as in the case with the batch 2, it was a wine cask. You can get sort of really yummy whiskies in a short amount of time, but in terms of, I guess, wanting to create more balance in whiskies and putting more of the grain profile forward, that's sort of where our whiskies are evolving to. The use of bourbon casks takes longer. So we haven't even released one yet, and the first one we will release will be a 4-year-old. So it's just sort of, I think, as you grow as a distillery and wanting to put, I suppose, that I guess the grain more forward in the whiskies, which I think is a trend as well. There are a lot of really good sort of fortified casks and red wine casks you can get in Australia, but the first time you fill them, you are going to get a lot of oak influence. So to be able to refill those or use different casks like bourbons, I think is just an exciting way as you grow as a distillery and get a little bit older, that you can start to put the grain a little bit more forwards. But it's it's a real challenge when you're starting as a distillery to be able to do that, because a lot of the time you can best do that with those casks when they're second fills, but no one's going to give them up to you. You've got to start with recharred casks. So, and they always have a bigger influence on the spirit. So, but yeah, so as we grow and evolve, I think that's really exciting to be able to do that. And all the work, that I've put into choosing grains and our yeast, and just to be able to put that a little bit more forward is going to be great.
Yeah, cool. I think Christopher's got a great question, which was what kind of still was used for the release, and you've procured another still. How is that different at all? Now, you got to talk about the names as well, but if you want to let us know about your stills.
Yep. So our whiskey still we've named him Sylvester Stallone. Now he is a 1250. Couple of pot still that I designed it with Mark Burns out of Griffith from Burns Fabrication. So it's an electric powered still. Lots of cool stuff on Sylvester. He's got a nice big reflux ball, so we get lots of reflux happening just at the top of the boil. We've got the the line arm, we'll show a picture. The line arm just sort of points down and slightly downwards towards the condenser. So we do get a lot of oils carrying over in the spirit. It's a really nice oily spirit. And our condensers, sort of as you'd expect with Sylvester Stallone, it's on steroids. It's got lots and lots of stainless baffles in there, and that cools the vapor really quickly. But also inside, we've got lots of copper plates. So as the spirit cools, it just works its way down those plates. So we get loads of copper contact through the condenser as well, which really, of course, cleans the spirit up. And our second still that we've named her Stilvia, and she is dedicated to gin. So yeah, we've been making gin since about 2 years now, and that coincided with our plan to move into and open a distillery door, to have that option for people. I always did say I'm all about the whiskey. I was never going to make gin, and here I am making gin, and it's actually a lot of fun. I've really enjoyed making it. But Stilvia as well, she's really versatile. She is a column still, so I can actually pack out a column and get neutral spirit. I've been making brandy on her as well. We work pretty closely with Scion Wines in Rutherglen on a few projects, and so we've been making some brandy from his musket spent lees, so it's really delicious. So yeah, to be able to do those things, and we can make the brandy in a single pass on a column still, so it's a little bit quicker and really good fun, those little projects. So Stilvia, yeah, she does all the gin, but she also manages a lot of the little projects, and Sylvester just slugs away on the whiskey all day, every day.
Yeah, awesome. I will say Scion's probably one of the best wineries to visit if you're ever in Rutherglen. And I don't know how, but they did give me a little taster of the unaged spirit that came off the still, and I was like, this is cool. I want more of this. They're like, no. still in the works.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah, there we go. See a little picture of the still there. So you can see the big reflux ball, which is great. Lots of reflux there, and that slight angle down to the condenser. So as I was talking about. So no, thanks for finding the picture. And Stilvia is there. So yeah, so Stilvia, all the column there comes apart, and you pack it out with they're basically like stainless and copper. They're called pall bearings, but they're just little loops of steel, and it just causes loads and loads of reflux as the spirit works its way up, or the vapor works its way up, I should say, and then along down to the condenser. But yeah, so Stilvia, she's a little, she's 500 liters. Her condenser's nowhere near as big as Sylvester's, so she's a little bit slower, but that's okay. She does her job pretty well.
Yeah, awesome. Well, should we crack into the second whiskey?
Yes.
The batch 2 French oak and red wine single malt.
Yes. So this was always this was a single cask release, and in the first few years as the barrels maturing, this barrel always just stood out. It was just really special. It just had a whole load of complexity, but just a lovely sweetness and chewiness, and it just really stood out. So this was a French oak red wine cask from the Barossa.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, recoup it over there as well at A Stiller Coopers.
You guys use quite a lot of French oak in your maturation and whatnot there, don't you?
Yeah, we do. Yep. Which we sort of try and buy our casks. Like, there's sort of two main suppliers in Australia, and we tend to try not to buy our casks from them, just because we want to create something. Whiskies, I suppose, are a little bit different. So we do try and find a lot of casks ourselves. We work really closely with the guys at Corowa, and it's awesome now because they're just about to build a cooperage there, which is fantastic.
Convenient.
So convenient. So like, those guys are awesome. If they're buying, they're a lot bigger than us, and if they're buying 100 casks, they'll say, hey, we've got these pretty awesome casks, do you want 10, do you want 20? Or so yeah, we tend to do that, and we tend to buy a lot out of the Barossa, because there's a little cooperage. I suppose he's a big cooperage in terms of wineries, but he only does a little bit of spirit stuff, and we always get an order in with him every year. So we just know we're getting some stuff that's a little bit different, a little bit unusual. And I reckon you can taste it in the whiskies.
Awesome. Chris has another great question with the batch number 1. Why didn't you release it at a higher ABV? And is there a reason you opted for doing a vatting rather than like a single cask?
I think because there was a fair, like the casks themselves in batch 1 were fairly consistent. So it just made sense that like they were all good. There wasn't one that really stood out as being better than the others. So yeah, we thought a vatting would be good. We also thought, because it was a first release, that we wanted to try and get as much out there as possible, and that we did have a lot of interest in the first release, which was really awesome. So we wanted it to be significant. We didn't want to disappoint. If people wanted it, we wanted them to be able to get it. So I think it ended up being something like, it was still only, I don't know, 800 or 900 bottles. But yeah, we sort of wanted to stretch it as far as we could and just get as much out there. You want people tasting your first batch. We did, and with the 55, we did muck around with it up at that with a higher ABV, but again, we just decided that we wanted to spread it out as far as we could. Yeah, so we've done that with a couple of our other releases. We've released 2 strengths, and we've done that mostly if we think it works really well. We haven't always been happy with some of our releases in doing that, so we haven't done it. But if they taste good at 2 ABVs, we'll tend to do it. Yeah.
Fair enough.
Leigh, I was going to ask, with batch 2, I'm getting quite a little bit of choc malt on the baseline there. Have you, because I know you use Voyager, obviously, did you use some of that barley in this release?
So so in this release, it's the crystal malt as well, which is sort of that it's just extra kiln time, so it does get that really kind of caramelized, honey kind of note. So yeah, it's definitely that one, I think. We use chocolate malt in our rye, but we don't use it in the single malt.
It's delicious, by the way. Just savoring the nose. And such a small sample. Some of these earlier batches, I obviously jumped on the website, bought them off you guys. And then just kept them sitting in my collection behind me. And knowing one day we would have to do a cask, and I said, well, you can't just do a tasting of one whiskey, so let's bring out some of the historic releases which are long gone, and to actually try them for the first time. I'm just savoring it. They're delicious.
Yeah, awesome. I have not tasted this one for a while because we've run out of it. I don't think we even have a single bottle, which is devastating. But we just had people, particularly for this one, we just had customers just like begging and like relentlessly sort of begging for it. So we ended up we sort of let all of it go, which we're better at hanging on to past releases now. We keep a bit more, but we're still pretty green back then. And if people twisted our arm hard enough, we'd sell it to them. Yeah.
Fair enough. Not a terrible tactic to take. I will say as well, it's nice to see from trying some of your newer stuff to trying the older stuff. Some distilleries tend to have a flavor that always jumps out in every release, or exists in some format. And I've always found that you guys have this frogs in a pond thing, that jelly and chocolate thing.
Yeah, cool. Yeah.
And I love that, going back to that first one, I still get those flavors. It's always nice to see.
That is really cool to hear. And because you sort of think about that, what's the DNA of your whiskey, and you hope it does that, has that kind of identity. And because you spend so much time on what my philosophy in the distillery is, I sweat the small stuff, and that's the reason I do it. Every little thing, worry about it, clean it, fix it, don't just leave it. So and I think that's why you get there with that sort of DNA, because every little thing, it does matter.
Yeah, absolutely. Awesome. Well, do we want to crack on to some really exciting ones, the red gum?
Yeah, sure. Cool. So the red gums. So we've done a couple.
We just because there was a confusion with the labels. It's the one that says batch 1 red gum 48%.
And it is actually the rye and not the single malt. It's a bit of a labeling.
No, so this is the single malt. This is the single malt, and then the next one is the mistake. So the one that says
Yep.
single malt red gum 2022 is actually meant to be a rye. I blame our label guy, David Ligoff, for that mistake.
We're just hoofing him under the bus.
But yes, whiskey number 3 is the one that says single malt whiskey batch 1 red gum in brackets. So yeah, drink that one next.
So we've done a couple of red gum releases now, and the first batches of red gum, we did a lot of small sort of cask experimentation with it, and we had some disasters and then some real successes. It's a really tricky thing to do. It's a really hard wood to, I guess, tame. So yeah, it was really challenging, but it was a really fun project to work on, and we worked on this with Andrew Stiller, who's the cooper in the Barossa that I mentioned before. So we sort of discovered that really the trick to the red gum is you have to use really, really old wood. So the wood that we sourced for these casks were actually destined to be fence posts, and they were hanging up in the rafters of the cooperage, and they were put there by his dad. And he thought they must have been there for 50 odd years and were just never used. So he took it all down and cut it into staves, turned it into barrels. And we sort of had a couple of ideas, you know, were we going to go straight in with spirit? You know, it was really virgin wood in the sense that, you know, no spirit had ever touched it. Were we going to go straight in, or were we going to try and season it, or what we should do? So we decided to be bold, and we sort of just wanted to put the red gum on show, and let's all taste it and let's really see what it's like. So yeah, that we did a single cask of single malt and a single cask of rye, and we just matured them side by side. Yeah, and we're pretty as they progressed, we kept a really, really close eye on them, because as I said, it was the sort of wood that you just never quite trusted. It would either leak on you, or, you know, and just what, you know, the extraction and the rate of it, and they cause a lot of worry. It doesn't behave like oak. But we sort of got them to this point where we ended up being really, really happy with them. And the red gum single malt, it's a nice sort of red gum uppercut. You get this sort of explosion of flavour from the red gum. I don't know what you guys can find in there, but I often get this little kind of strawberry jam note, and then sort of what comes through on the finish, it's almost like a little bit of fresh, you know, is that kind of fresh eucalypt kind of on the finish. There's something kind of fresh that finishes, but it's as well, like, it's all from the char of the wood. It's got a bit of a campfire smoke kind of note to it as well. So yeah, so that's the story behind the first red gum barrels. I'll talk about the second one now, just because, yeah, I know we're not quite tasting it yet, but it probably fits with the story. In that the task was then that we used up all the wood on those two casks. Where the hell are we going to get more red gum to do it? And we discovered over in the Barossa what often the wineries did when they were building the wineries. They just cut down the trees around the wineries, and a lot of them turned the trees into big fermentation vats. So a winery was upgrading their fermentation vats and pulling down their red gum ones. And the cooper that we work with found out about it. He went and got all of the wood, and he was planning on actually using it in the new house that he was building. And I managed to convince him to give it all to me, and he still brings it up every time I talk to him that he regrets it. But, you know, it was such beautiful wood that he wanted to use it. So yeah, he's turned that all into red gum casks for me. So we've got, I think, out of that load of wood, maybe we must have 15 more casks. And again, it's just the same story behind the wood, in that it's really old, air dried. Being a wine fermentation vat, it hasn't really had any wine impact on the wood, because they do put like a waxy layer on it. So so really probably the you'll find as you move over to the rye, the actual, I guess, extractives and the impact of the red gum on the wine vat barrels is a little bit less. So you do get a little bit more balance in the whiskey and particularly the rye too. Like the rye is much more robust. So the rye does sort of work its way through the red gum.
You mentioned strawberry notes. I'm getting a little bit of like caramelized banana in there as well, or a bit of a fruit salad.
Yeah,
It's fibrous. The whiskey could taste fibrous.
Well, Paul's just said different floral and dry. I'm on multiple sips. The floral elements come out. I am getting a little bit of that campfire char, but I just wanted to say this is my favorite red gum release. I've tried a few ones that have come out, and a few distilleries who have chosen never to release their red gum releases because they just didn't work. And the fact that you guys I get flavors from the wood. I'm getting other flavors, and I'm getting your spirit still. Is like 3 big ticks for me. I don't know if other people in the room are agreeing, but to me, it's still a Backwoods whiskey, first and foremost, which is not being hidden by the wood.
Yeah, thanks so much. That's really great to hear. Yeah, look, I sort of understand why people haven't released them, and because we did, like I said, some small cask stuff, and it can be disastrous. It's just not worth messing with red gum wood that is sort of young. I've had a couple of bad ones too.
Yeah,
some of them were mine too.
It's interesting to see a couple of guys picking up on the red gum, and I've seen a few distilleries as well who've tried like doing native woods and stuff, and they're like, don't tell anyone that we're doing this because we're not sure if we're going to do it. And then like 5 years later I still heard nothing, so I'm like, I'm assuming they just binned the project. So it's quite an unusual, and it's a tough stance to take, I think, as well, because it is so unpredictable from what people know. Chris's question as well is if you've got any inklings to try Jarrah wood or other native woods, perhaps.
Yeah, I haven't, like, red gum kind of was the focus, and I sort of don't want to take it any further in that, imagine having, I don't know, like I know there's a distillery out there that does lots of different types of Australian hardwoods, and I don't reckon you want to challenge the consumer that much. I reckon maybe throw on one thing a little bit different. Oak's generally what we use, and this is our special little thing that we do. But I'm not interested in doing those sort of lots of different Australian hardwoods. I think it's too much. But if other people want to do it, so good luck to them. Be good if they did it legitimately, but that's another story.
I can imagine the anxiety as well of, there are already woods that don't like behaving and have a tendency to leak, and are quite temperamental just to use. So it's it would almost be like parenting hundreds of children. They're all barrels, and you've got to give each one special attention and time. So it's just they're naughty children. Like one of our red gums just it slowly just pressed out on the hoop and just burst it off, and then starts to leak. So things like that, it's just like I've never seen an oak barrel do that. And they just leak everywhere. Like they take a long time. You just need to kind of bruise the wood slowly at the leaks and close it up over a number of days. You just got to watch them. Yeah. But we've actually got a new design of the red gum barrel. They actually stand up. So they stand up and sort of taper in at the top. So they don't have any bilge on them. They're straight and just sort of, come into at the top. Yeah. Okay. Like pencil shaped barrel.
Kinda. Yeah.
Leo, if you're gonna like be known for like one native wood and you just do it right, and then you kind of become that Aussie champion of red gum, I think that's a great place to be. You don't have to take it all, right?
Yeah. Thank you. I agree. Like I just red gums are just all around us in our around here in the northeast along the rivers. So, and it's just got sort of a special meaning to us. So that's part of the reason we do it too. But don't want to go too far.
Yeah. Now, if people haven't already been cracking into the rye, the one that is called Single Malt, which is actually rye, batch 2022 red gum. Yeah, so I think this is the first rye that we're trying tonight. So maybe tell us a little bit about your love of rye and rye whiskey and all the fun stuff.
Yeah, sure. So rye's probably my passion. Like that I just love making rye whiskey because I love drinking it, and luckily I really enjoy the rye whiskey that we make, so I get to enjoy it. So it's a little bit selfish of me, right, that I'm just making it for me, but I've decided that I'd share it all anyway. So look, I've just always had an interest in rye, and it's actually really quite a challenging little beast to work with, so that kind of makes it appealing too. Every day that you're working with a rye grain, it will again, it's like a naughty child, it will do something wrong. Now the rye we use has got a really cool story. We use Voyager craft malt for all of our ryes, for all of our malts, and this particular rye that they found was actually it was found by a farmer that was selling his property. He was selling up, and it was like a liquidation sale, and he had a bag of seed that was this rye that he'd found growing wild in his paddock, and he took a little bit of seed. Those grains ended up being tested by the crew of Voyager, and they discovered that it was a heritage. It was actually a couple of heritage varieties that it had sort of become, a single variety over time. They sort of blended in, but that it was a variety that hadn't been used for since 100 years ago. It was a really old rye, a really old variety of it. So it ends up being kind of half the size of a commercial variety, but because it was left out there growing wild, it's been sort of hardened by drought and Australian conditions, and it's got twice the amount of flavour in this little grain. It's really unique. The other thing the guys at Voyager do is they malt it. Because it's such a potent little beast, it's so tasty, the malting actually softens it a bit, which is great. It works really well for this particular variety of rye. But we found that we first started to try and do 100% rye in the mash. It caused a lot of problems, but we also found that the flavour was really quite intense, and we wanted to create, I think, a rye that was really quite approachable. And I kind of wanted to create a rye that got that, because often when I would drink rye, people go, I don't like rye, and I'd say why, and they wouldn't quite know. And I always thought in the back of my mind, I want to make a rye that everyone likes. I want to make a rye that's approachable, and so that was sort of my goal. So we use that amazing little rye grain, and we softened it the guys at Voyager soften it by malting it, but then we also add in some barley. So it's 30%, so it's 60% rye, 30% barley, and we also add in wheat. The 10% wheat addition just sort of takes the peaks out of everything. You don't really taste the wheat, but if you only notice it if it's not there. It just sort of smooths all the peaks out. And we add a little bit of chocolate malt too, and we just did that on the new make when we're testing it, because we just wanted to bring a bit of length to the finish. So a little bit of chocolate malt in there, and it's really interesting what our chocolate malt does when it's aged in, say, a French oak, and compare that to when it's aged in an American oak. Even our rye itself, the way it behaves in American oak compared to French oak, it's really different. So different to the single malts. That's the story of the rye grain. I mentioned already the sort of cask, that it was one of those wine vat casks for this batch 2 release. So I think there's a little bit more balance in this one, in the batch 2s of the red gums. But some of that familiar stuff I kind of get. What are those lollies called? I think we were talking about it, Emma, when you visited. They used to be called, I think, inappropriately Redskins. Yeah.
Yeah. Now they're called something else that I can't remember. So terrible.
Yeah, but it's definitely got that that kind of, what do you call it, frog in a pond, that lolly kind of. Yeah, raspberry jelly and chocolate, and then they're kind of blurring together at the edges, and the chocolate's going a little bit smushy. Yeah.
Leigh, what's your favorite sort of American rye If you're a big fan of rye, what do you normally tend to go towards?
Yeah, like there's a few I like. I like what I used to drink when I was before I actually started making rye. Flat out was stuff like Parksville, Whistle Pig. They were always in my cupboard. But then, like I discovered, like probably my favourite rye is Peter Bignell's. I know there's not a lot of rye in Australia, but I just love Belgrove rye. I think it's just so delicious. I just love the way he makes it, and just how he's great. I think he's grain that, obviously that he grows. It's just so unique. There's nothing else like Peter's rye, so I just love it. I'm a massive fan of his. What other American ryes? Like always, like a Sazerac or something I'll go for. Like you do find that around the place. Or
we just did a big rye July event in Sydney, the 22 different ryes.
I saw that.
Which we got to get you down for the next time we do it. But I'm just sipping on it now. Apart from the big bold sort of sweetness, there's a bit of honey for me. On my third sip, I'm getting a bit of that medicinal note that Sazerac, but more like the Sazerac 18 gets. The refined. Right. It's very cool, and the fact that it's come out of a red gum. I need to go see if I've got a bottle behind me somewhere and do a side by side, because it's this is delicious. I'm surprised how much I'm loving it.
Yeah, cool. Oh, that's awesome. Yeah.
I remember when these first came out, the rye was like blown away. Awesome.
Has this 2022 release come out yet, or is this a preview?
It's came out. Yeah.
And it's long gone, long sold out.
Yeah, it was. When did we release it? I think it was around Easter, like March, April. Yeah, and it was like the last one. It was gone. It was gone in a few days.
And when's I can see James down there has got his bottle open, enjoying it. When's the next red gum rye coming out?
The next one that'll be out is actually a red gum single malt, which have gone into the first release cask. But actually, we did season 2 red gum casks as well. So one of them had Tawny in it for a year, and one had a whiskey that I was just unhappy with in it for a year, that I was always going to redistill. So I thought, I'll just throw it in the red gum and season it, and then it's since been redistilled. So I think there's some whiskey in those 2 casks, single malt, they're probably about 2 years old now. So so we'll probably let them hit 3 at least, and so we're probably another year away. That'll be single malt, and then I reckon we're probably another year after that for another red gum rye.
But we put me on the waiting list.
Yeah, cool. But we filled a lot of red gum ryes. So the sort of plan moving forward is that we'll always put rye in the red gum first, and then second fill them with single malt. And I think I've just managed to find some more red gum out of the Barossa. So, the plan is that we'd love it to be a core range product, but we just I'm just not going to risk it with wood that's not appropriate. So I don't know. I hope I can manage that. I can get there, but we'll see. Yeah, it'd be awesome to have it always available.
Just curious in the room, hands up if you enjoyed the single malt red gum, and then hands up if you prefer the rye red gum. I think the ryes have it just. They're both exceptional whiskies. Like I said, I think you already got the crown of handling the red gum, the tedious red gum cask in Australian whiskey, at least from what I've tried. But super keen to see what else you guys come up with it.
Thanks guys. Yeah, I appreciate that.
You truly have a gift for taking on things that are unwieldy and don't like to behave, like rye and red gum.
Well, I was a school teacher before this, so yeah.
I don't think I'm well versed enough in psychology to really go into that. But shall we hop on to our last whiskey? So this is obviously very special to us, very near and dear to our hearts. Being a Whiskey Lovers Australia Rye July release. Obviously, we would have loved to give it a rye pun name, but they tend to get old pretty quick. So tell us a little bit about this one.
Yeah, so this is our sort of our classic rye mash bill, and it's gone into same cask that you tasted on the batch 1 single malt, so Tawny cask out of Rutherglen. Some of the really yummy old sort of 50-year-old casks that we had recoopered. So yeah, in went the rye. We hadn't done a Tawny rye, and these casks were filled kind of right at the end of the year, and I was sort of like, what, I've got 2 casks left. I'm making rye. I wasn't planning on actually using these Tawny casks for the rye. I was going to hold on to them, and I thought, it's the end of the year. I'm just going to fill these. That'll do. And I sort of just put them at the back. Didn't think about them too much, and then I think Ollie contacted us and said, "Hey guys, love to do a cask. Have you got anything different?" And I sort of went for a walk, or around the back of the Bond store, and I thought, "Oh, those things. That's right. They weren't meant to happen." And because you kind of said, "Have you got anything cool and unusual?" And I thought, well, yeah, they're kind of unusual. So had a little sample out of them, and they were awesome. Like, these were seriously the barrels that we put at the back of the shed that we didn't go near. I didn't taste them along the way, and the first taste I had, I was just like, wow, that works so well. Just that that richness that the spirit is pulled from the Tawny cask. It's just so delicious and thick, but then the rye just stands up so perfectly. I think it's just got that that piney kind of prickle to it, and it just pops out from the Tawny. So happy with it. I almost didn't want to give it to you guys. But no, so glad that was our release with you guys, because I think it just works so well. It was just a really, really nice little surprise. Just one of those little risks you take, and it really paid off.
For those who don't know, so Whiskey Lovers Australia is our little Facebook community. Just try and make whiskies fun and accessible for everyone. Some good, quaffable debates that are happening occasionally, but most of the time it's just people enjoying delivery days and sharing and asking questions. But with our WLA releases, there's a tiny criteria. One is it's always an Aussie whiskey. We try and engage with the lesser known distilleries. So I don't think I'm happy to say I don't think that there's no plans to ever do like a lark. We want to work with the smaller husband and wife, mum and dad, father and son sort of distilleries, and just spread the word of what they're doing. And we try and do something quirky, something unique, something outside what that distillery is known for. So some distilleries only do a 45 or 48%. So we'll ask for a natural cask strength. Some don't play with different woods. Some do young maturation, old maturation, or something. So we'll sit down with that distillery and work out what is, if you think of a bell curve, where does this whiskey can sit out of it, and we'll explain it to the community that it's love the distillery, enjoy what they do, but these releases are always fun, are always a little playful, always a little bit of an experiment and a bit of a positive risk, just to push the boundaries of where Aussie whiskey can go, because it's a young industry, and I think there's so much innovation and cool things that are happening, and like what Leigh and Bree and the whole team at Backwoods have done with this one. I think it's your first natural cask strength rye as well.
So it's just that's the highest ABV on anything that we've released before. I didn't mention before, but sometimes a reason for that is our whiskies do come down to 55, because often what I'll do when I think the casks are ready, I'll start adding some water, and I'll give them the cask another 6 months. So I might take the ABV from 63 down to 59, or as low as 55. We just find that doing that, you get sort of having the spirit interact, or the spirit and the water interact with the oak, or at those different ABVs, you just get different extractives, and it adds complexity. And you also find that integration with the water works so much better. But with these Tawny casks, when I tasted it, that cask strength, I was like, no, I'm not messing with that. That's just perfect. And when we talked about sort of getting in bottle for you, I did muck around with it in that same method, in that same way that I used it. I put it at a few different strengths, but all up pretty high, from sort of 55 to what was it, to 62 or whatever it came out at.
Yep.
And it was the best at natural cask strength. So yeah, so that was cool.
This whiskey was also I think we were pushing for a like November Christmas release, and you said to Bree, we need another summer. So I said, distilling is best, obviously on the ground, you know how your whiskeys work, and I'm so glad we gave it that extra 6 months. I think Tim Duckett's first one to kind of start talking about summers, not years, for Aussie whiskey, because it's the interaction with the woods. And I think there's some questions in the audience when you're getting a 5-year-old, but it's I think we're waiting for a 5 summers of
Yes.
Backwoods. That's kind of the where we're chasing right next.
Yeah, definitely. Yep. Yes, that it's funny now. All distillers are they're talking that way to each other. Everyone's like, yeah, another summer. No one's talking years anymore. Yeah, it's and that transformation you get over a summer, and particularly in a shed like ours, is pretty significant.
Yeah, it's been interesting speaking to some Scottish blenders and distillers and whatnot, and they're starting to use summers as well. You know, it's obviously a little bit warmer over there right now than they're used to.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, this is amazing. It's got that like orange creams from the roses box, like orange creams and maple syrup. It's amazing. But yeah. So missed a question from Chris before. Obviously, Peter Bignell down at Belgrove was a huge fan in producing your rye. Did you take on any of his maybe not quite OH&S appropriate methods in production, his unique distilling methods?
Well, when I was sort of saying before, like, I what led me to be a distiller was one day looking at the whiskey thing. I wonder how you make it. And then I always, and you start Googling it, and it always looks so impossible, because when you start Googling distilleries, you start looking at Scottish setups, and, thinking, when will I ever get $10 million for a setup? So, but then not long after that, I went down and met Peter Bignell and saw his setup, and I thought, I reckon I can do this. Yeah, like it was pretty inspiring to see what the way he used things, and was just so innovative, and yeah, just damn cool. So yeah, I sort of came back with a bit of confidence that I could do it in my shed, at least, get it started. But yeah, probably I think, yeah, it's particularly our new site. It's definitely OH&S compliant.
That's good to hear.
Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. Well, we've got a little bit of a poll up for everyone to pick their fave. And obviously, if you guys have any other questions, pop them in the chat, or just unmute yourself and ask Leigh, pick his brain while we still have him for a bit. So obviously we heard a little bit as well about the brandy that you've got, and there's heaps of other non-whiskey and whiskey adjacent, I would think, projects in the works.
Yep. So look, we do muck around a little bit and have a bit of fun with different things. So we've got some fun stuff coming out with what sort of underpins the distilleries. We try and use local ingredients. So again, we can't get peat, so we don't use peat to smoke malts. We've used red gum, so we're going to have a release of that coming out in a couple of weeks. So that's really exciting. And just the way that that the red gum smoke works on the malt, and it's just a much lighter smoke and not as earthy, and just really, really delicious. So excited by that. We've got that 4-year-old coming out that I mentioned, and it's great. You sort of look in the Bond store now and the next few releases, and we've got lots of really cool stuff coming up. And sort of going back to Ollie's question before, or I can't remember if it was you or Ollie, Emma, sorry, about the evolution and has the spirit changed. And I think these next whiskies are really going to show I guess another side of us, but also, yeah, some new directions we're heading in. And yeah, so there's lots of cool stuff. But I guess as well, we're trying to actually we want to try and get to a point where we've got a core range. So, it takes a while, I think, to get there, in that we wanted to try lots of different types of barrels and just see what our spirit worked with the best. I think we've got a pretty good idea of that now. So now it's sort of a matter of working towards keeping those products in stock for good. So we've got a bit of work to do there, but it's fun. We've also been sending some of our rye to the US, so we've started exporting, and that looks like it's going to keep happening. So that's really exciting. So we've got to make lots more rye.
It's a terrible
keeping
problem.
plenty for Australia as well, obviously.
Yeah. I feel like I'm selling ice to Eskimos.
How many barrels do you have laid down at the moment?
We've got about 200, and all different sizes, as I mentioned before. So most of what we've filled this year has been the larger formats, but we've probably got about 22,000 litres maturing at the moment. And I guess our production for this year will pump out about 15,000, and we'll probably be able to do just a little bit more than that next year. But we're almost running at capacity for the whiskey. So we're actually in the process of building another shed, getting another still, and trying to ramp things up a little bit that way. We've actually got no more space for barrels, and the guys at Corowa have been really kind, and they're storing our barrels over there while we get the other shed up.
Yeah, nice.
I was just going to ask anyone who's traveling down or down from Sydney down to Victoria, or from Victoria up, when's the cellar door open, when they can visit, where's the best place to come hang out with you guys?
Yes, so we're open. The cellar door's open. What are we now? Yeah, so Thursday through to Monday. So we're closed on Tuesdays and Wednesdays, and that's kind of just the way things are around Yakandana. They're the days everyone closes. But we also use those for our mashing days, because it does get a bit noisy and things for customers in there when we're actually mashing. So yeah, so we're open sort of 11 till 5 on those days. And yeah, like sometimes groups, if a group's coming through, or you're with a buddy or whatever, and you want to call in and we're in there mashing, we usually let you in and say hi. So just let us know you're coming. And we're always happy to say g'day. And yeah, Tawny, our other brewer and distiller, he'll chew your ear off. You won't be able to get away. But
Forever.
Yeah. So yeah, we're open 5 days a week.
Yeah, awesome. And I can confirm Gumtree Pies is a great place nearby for food afterwards. Much needed food afterwards.
Yeah.
Few last little questions. How has shifting your operation and front of house from home to business venue been? Obviously escaping the garage is a bit of a change.
Yeah. It's great. Like, it's sort of good it is good to have that separation. It was kind of convenient when you could sit on the couch at home when you're doing a stripping run or something, and it still didn't need much attention, and you could do it from the couch at home. But you can't do that now, but that's okay. But no, it's great. Like I was going to say, it's great in that, like it's a far more slick operation. When I spill stuff on the floor, it actually goes down the drain and disappears. When I used to spill it on the floor in the shed, it would stay there, and then you'd step in it, and then it would stay there and get sticky, and it was a mess. So to have sort of a purpose-built facility and safety and all those kind of things, it's pretty awesome. Yeah,
it's that weighing up of not having to wear pants versus actually being able to clean easily.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Awesome.
So no, it's great, and it's nice just to have it's such a great facility. I smell the roses every morning on the way to work.
Yeah, awesome. We got one last one from Lyle as well. Do you have a favorite release, or is it like picking a favorite child? You are a parent, so I assume you do have a favorite.
Yeah, that's a good question. It's sort of my mood. It'll change. Like sometimes it just depends what I'm sort of enjoying. But at the moment, I am really loving the Tawny rye. It's what I've been drinking. We kept a bottle and it's nearly gone. It's been great. So at the moment, that's my favorite. But ask me in a couple of weeks, it'll probably be something else. But yeah, it's been a great whiskey.
Just the perfect segue. So just share the results of the poll. It's your favorite. It's apparently the crowd favorite as well.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, fantastic.
Your batch 2, your first single cask, ranked highly as well.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, well like I said, that one always stood out. So it's good to see others like it as well.
I heard there's I know you guys can't make it. You don't have enough whiskey to pour, but there's a whiskey show in Melbourne in a few weeks' time. Someone's driving down. Cough, not me, maybe me. Down to Melbourne, and a second bottle. Maybe this one is might turn up at your desk at work. To replenish your supplies.
Oh, awesome! Oh, that'd be awesome. Fantastic.
And from me, it's just been an absolute pleasure. We've always been keen to do a release with you guys, and big thanks to Bree and the whole team. Yeah, it's been wonderful to put this together, and to actually go, let's just do natural cask strength straight out of the barrel, and it works, and it's delicious. And every time I go back to it, I discover new flavors that I'm enjoying, and seems like the audience voted as their favorite today. I posted up a quick link. We've got the last few bottles at the original price up there today. Otherwise, the rest will probably flog off in the next few weeks. But if there's anyone keen to grab a second bottle, jump on it. Otherwise, if there's no other questions, Leigh, thanks again, and please pass on our thanks to Bree as well, and the whole team and family there. And we'll hopefully do a future release with you guys again soon.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks so much, guys, and thanks. There's a lot of familiar faces in the Zoom tonight, so thanks everyone for tuning in, and it's awesome to see you guys. Thanks heaps.
No worries.
Thank you so much.
Leigh, you might do it. Just stay on for a few minutes for a quick debrief, and we'll bid everyone farewell. Thank you, everyone. See you at the next one.
Thanks, guys.
Take care.
Stop recording.